All right, we're moving along in lesson 4.2 now, talking about constant rates of change. So here is the answer, or I should say actually our question for this section. I know that most of the rest of your teachers put up learning targets, but our book basically writes your learning target in the form of a question. So we'll think of it kind of like Jeopardy. Here we go. How can I identify and represent proportional relationships? So everything in this whole section, we're going to talk about proportions, proportional relationships, proportionality, the constant of proportionality. We're just going to be using this word so much, it's going to basically just roll off your tongue all the time. So let's get going on some of this vocabulary, okay? A rate of change. Well, because we're saying a rate, it is a rate. That's part of the definition. So now we got to talk about what does it mean to be a rate of change. So basically, we're going to talk about some sort of rate that tells us or shows us or describes. So I'm going to say that describes how one quantity or one value, I'll just use the number one, okay? How one value relates or changes with respect to another one. So let's see, a rate that describes how one value relates to another one. I think that's, or changes in relation to another one. I guess that's the best way. Changes in relation to another. Once you see a bunch of these, then it'll become more clear. It's just the wordy definition may not make sense completely at first, but we'll get through this and then go from there. All right, the second thing that we want to talk about then is what does it mean to be a proportional relationship, okay? And basically what this means is that you have two quantities, and basically that the rate of change is constant. The rate of change is constant. That means it stays the same. So I'll just write same. Same value each and every time, okay? All right, next is proportion. And when we talk about proportions, and I know you did this a lot in 6th grade, basically it's when we have two rates or ratios. Oftentimes we write them as fractions. I guess your book in this case likes to also use the term rates, but basically two ratios that are equal. And we're making a number sentence here. So if I pick, sometimes I like to have an example. So if I pick something like, 3/4, okay? There are tons of fractions that are equal to 3/4. I'm going to pick something like 6/8. Okay, now that I have two ratios and I am using the equal sign to show that they have equivalent values, that makes the proportion. It's the sentence of the two of them, okay? Finally, this last thing that I want to talk about, this constant of proportionality. What I want you to write down for right now is simply use the value k. That's the letter or the variable we're going to use to represent it. And we're going to come back to this in a minute. We'll finish this after we do some examples, and then I think it'll make sense. Sometimes I use the word multiplier as a clue because sometimes you can see it right away because you're thinking about what is the multiplier or that number that works each and every time. And as I said, it'll make more sense. So let's take a look at a few examples here. Here's the first one. Callie is earning money by dog sitting. Here's on a table that shows the relationship between the amount Callie earns and the number of days. And so our job is to determine, is this a proportional relationship? Okay, so we're talking about the money and the days. And so how we are going to write our unit rates here is we're going to put the money on top and the days on the bottom, okay? Money over days. So that means I'm going to make a bunch of fractions here where I put the money, which is in the second row, on top, the days on the bottom. And I'm going to do dollars over days, okay? And then the second one here, I'm going to do $32 over 2 days. Next one is 48 over 3, 64 over 4, and 80 over 5.